Or you're a traitor.
Or you're a traitor, exactly. Yeah. Or a grifter.
I think, one of the things, I love that one.
Yeah.
Do you have hope that there's been a sea change? We're at the very beginning of it, but it's strange. I was just talking to Donald Trump. I was doing a fundraiser at Mar-a-Lago a couple of days ago, and I said, I think we're like the cool kids now. I've never been at the cool kids table.
This is wild.
Once we've taken in a bit of this juicy interview, God, I still can't really get over it. I mean, like I said, it's what we've been predicting. It's what's happening right now with Anna Kasparian is literally the manifestation of everything that Zach and I have told you will happen. But even it still feels surreal to be this vindicated. You know what I'm saying? Like when we started exposing the Young Turks, when we started beating this drum, I never would have thought we would become this vindicated in such a cartoonish fashion. Oh, Zach, it's mind-blowing. And I can't decide if it feels good on a personal level to be vindicated, but also it's sickening. I used to be fans of the Young Turks, and they were the biggest name in independent left-wing media. So it's stomach churning.
Oh, on top of it all, the cherry on top, this is where Rafe Dubin went after he left the Young Turks. Anna's there to see how big a slice of the pie Papa Beck would cut off for old Mama Bear. If she decides to turncoat her way out of the Young Turks. Let's get down to business. Yeah. Let's get right into the mud.
/Glenn Spar, how yourself over the last 10 years?
Well, I would say that I was firmly identifying myself as a Democrat. I think that if you look at my policy prescriptions, for the most part, I'm still pretty much left-wing. There are some social issues
Hold on. Definition of left-wing to you. Is that Democrat or left-wing? What does that mean?
Well, left-wing in regard to, I would say like one of my grounding political values is that workers should have better pay, better working conditions, a seat at the table, unionized.
Unless they get fired and end up on the streets, and then we can round them up and throw them in jail. Just get them out of my sight.
As labor, I think is
also. It has to be said, not that Anna is guilty for the crimes of her boss, Cenk Uygur, but she does work with and continue to defend a notorious union buster.
And she's a co-executive producer there.
Yeah, she's a co-executive producer.
She's management.
As you pointed out, she almost certainly has money tied up in the Young Turks.
Got assets in the Young Turks.
100%.
She's got stock options.
And again, she works for a disgusting union buster, someone who has no regard for workers' rights, someone who has exploited countless workers at the Young Turks, countless employees, not just people who don't have as much of a profile like our friend Hank, who came on our show and exposed Cenk, but even people like Ben Dixon, a high profile commentator who came on our show and exposed the way that Cenk tried to fuck him out of a lot of compensation in a contract. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is not a worker friendly company at all.
Incredibly important, which, it's something that's been decimated in recent decades in this country. But that's like my number one interest in politics. And that's not really something that has really been favored by the Republican Party, traditionally speaking. And historically, unionized labor was something that the Democratic Party looked out for. And I don't really see that as the case anymore when it comes to the mainstream Democrats. They're certainly more corporate now.
Joe Biden was literally the first president in the history of America to go out with the UAW workers and stand on a picket line. He strengthened the NLRB and gave it more teeth than it had ever had in my lifetime. I have a laundry list of criticisms of Joe Biden, but the last place you start with Joe Biden is saying that this guy didn't put unions give them a seat at the table. Okay, that is absolutely ludicrous to say when Elon Musk has bought his way into the Donald Trump administration, talking about how he doesn't think unions work. Okay, talking about Donald Trump told Elon Musk how much he admired his willingness to just fire people when they go on strike.
Elon Musk is a union buster.
100%. He's 100% a union buster. And yes, he did make, what's her name? Lori Chavez, the Secretary of Labor. But do you know what else he did? He put everybody else in power. That's a corporate lobbyist that's going to exploit workers and undermine her at every turn. It was a token. And to be honest, the labor secretary doesn't have as much power as the NLRB, which he is going to absolutely gut.
Severely conflicts with what the base of Democratic voters want. And so this has been a growing issue with the Democratic Party. And what I see as, their campaign call is more and more culture war stuff. And it gets more and more extreme every election cycle.
Oh my God, this is so insane. The Republican Party at this point is objectively, undeniably the party that is more obsessed with culture war issues. This, again, is a matter of fact. Look at the ads run by Republicans versus the ads run by Democrats. And I'm not even defending the strategy of the Democrats and the Kamala Harris campaign. I think there was a million terrible decisions that we talked about and criticized at length, from Liz Cheney to, neutering Tim Walz, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't think you can say that they leaned into culture war issues more than the Trump campaign did. No, the Trump campaign was running a ton of ads about trans people and about how 10 years ago, Kamala Harris said that a trans migrant should have their surgery paid for, or something completely irrelevant to everyone's life. Kamala Harris didn't bring up her identity. She didn't talk about being a woman. She didn't talk about being a black or an Indian person at all. She, for the most part, avoided that entirely. So Anna Kasparian's totally giving away the game here once again, just making shit up and projecting things onto the Democratic ticket that weren't even there.
Not only making shit up, but Gavin, you hit the nail on the head. She actually loves it when Donald Trump talks about these culture war issues, because it actually resonates with her. She's the one that he's reaching when he talks about, trans issues and how, oh my goodness, these people are taking over sports, and, oh my goodness, like, you can't go to the bathroom in peace, right? When we already showed you guys the Donald Trump video of him back in the day saying, oh my goodness, like, I don't care, use whatever bathroom you want. But Anna loves it when he talks about that. She loves it when he makes the culture war about trans issues. She loves it when he makes it about crime, because those are culture war issues that speak to her. In the beginning of this interview, guys, we're 2 minutes in, and we've had a diatribe for about 3 times as long. During this exact introduction, she says, I'm still mostly the same, except on a couple of culture war issues. The right was able to win Anna Kasparian over with their flimsy fucking culture war of bigotry and fear mongering. And now she's willing to start going further and further and further and further, because that's appealing to her.
Yep. 100%.
And I think that they're pushing more and more people away by sticking to the corporate politics, while also getting more and more maximalist when it comes to some of the culture war type issues.
So as I look, because it is so hard, what you do, what I do, there's so many words that come out of us every single day, and then out of context or not worded,
Yeah, he's talking about the N-word and a few others.
Exactly right. The way I look at the Democratic Party or the left is that there is the machine that is in bed now with big business. And that's just the crony capitalism, just the vomitous kind of corruption that we all hate in either party, any party.
Right.
Then there's the average Democrat who might disagree on taxes or whatever, but they believe in the Constitution and they believe in the Bill of Rights and everything else. And I think that has been that is the majority of people.
Absolutely.
And then there's this crazy left-wing Marxist, destroy it all.
Donald Trump's the one that said he wanted to terminate the Constitution, and the only ones that gave a shit about it were the people on the left. What the are you kidding me? He wants to say, all these normal people that care about the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. Oh, and then there's the crazy left that doesn't. Bro, we're the ones that are defending the actual fucking institutions of this stupid country and the goddamn Constitution and all these like sacred traditions and stuff. You're the ones willing to throw it all in the trash, throw it out the window for some bullshit dictator, for some fascist fucking celebrity clown who's not serious about uplifting anyone or making anything in this country better. What the
kind of group, and that I don't even know, maybe 8%, 10% is that. And it's the middle people who have been either lied to so effectively by so many people, mainly mainstream media, but we're at the beginning in the Democratic Party, possibly, of those people waking up and going, I don't like either end
right.
of the spectrum.
Yeah, I take a little bit of issue with the use of Marxist in this context because honestly, I think that there's maybe a total of like 5 actual Marxists in this country. In reality, we're talking about individuals whose politics is mostly based on, you know, some fringe issue or some cultural issue that they have. It's not just that they care about that issue, it's that they've taken that issue and they've made it part of their identity, the core of who they are. And it's almost
I mean, obviously that's true for some people. There's activists that like really get hung up on one issue. That's kind of the nature of being an activist. This exists on both political sides. I mean, take a look at the evangelicals and how obsessed they are with abortion and repealing women's right to health care. You don't think that the same shit Anna Kasparian is talking about applies to that? Of course it does. The only difference is the people on the left, their activist causes are, for the most part, actually important and actually would uplift people in this country if they were enacted policy wise. So yeah, I think that's completely ridiculous. Even if you disagree with some of the left-wing activists who are loud and aggressive or whatever, to act like that's exclusive to one political side is just ridiculous.
It's also freaking crazy to act like, oh, the activists are what's wrong with the country. Like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't be like the Democrats are awash with corporate dollars and then be like, oh, also it's the activists. So it's the corporations run the Democratic Party, which is true. Who's going to tell Anna they also run the Republican Party? And who's going to tell her that they don't run the activists and the activists don't have any fucking power? That's why our country's in the shitter right now.
Yep. Plus, the activists in the Republican Party actually have more say. I would say that the Democratic Party consistently shuts out the activist left, whereas the right wing, at least for the most part, uplifts them. I mean, that's why Donald Trump is their president, our president, and why Bernie Sanders got shafted. And we got Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris. You know what I'm saying? These aren't representatives of the activist left. Are you kidding me? Joe Biden is a total relic of the old school Democratic establishment.
Most like what you would expect from religious zealots, you know, and so there's a fundamentalism involved in the way that they treat these issues, and there's no room to negotiate. There's no room to maybe consider the thoughts and concerns of other individuals. And so as they become more and more kind of like authoritarian in what they demand, they are pushing people away. And there are some issues in which the rights of one group might actually end up conflicting with the rights of another group.
Man, separate but equal, bro. Separate but equal, man. I remember when I was in history class and they taught about this crazy example. There was this guy, Martin Luther King Jr. And he was constantly ragging about civil rights, like, oh, we want to be able to drink from the same water fountain. Oh, man, don't you know that the United States was just coming out of a war economy, Martin? Don't you know that maybe we don't have time? We're about to gear up for Vietnam. We need patriotism. Oh, that is literally the kind of shit that she's saying. Like, wow, you're really making your trans identity all about your identity, huh? Like, oh, I'm sorry that you can't get access to hormonal medication in the state of Missouri now because some AG that wasn't, elected but appointed said so.
Yep, 100%. And basically, I mean, she's making the point that this is a refrain. This is just the most, low IQ, least original talking point out there. You're going to hear anyone in liberal corporate media and conservative media at this point saying it, which is that I think it's actually trans people that cost the Democrats the election. I think, if it weren't for all these trans people and if it weren't for the Democrats' embrace of them, then maybe the American people wouldn't have rejected Kamala Harris, which again is completely ridiculous. The Democratic Party threw trans folks under the bus in this election cycle. Colin Allred in Texas put out a whole ad stating, asserting his opposition to boys playing in girls sports or whatever. And guess what? He lost by like 8 points. He got absolutely walloped. The Democrats have already taken this advice and they lose anyway. Just ceding the ground to the right wing on this issue is not going to help. And blaming trans people, really just a powerless, marginalized, tiny fraction of the country for the failure of elite corporate Democrats, it's absolutely insane.
Yeah, well said.
Depending on what type of legislation you're pursuing. And so, of course, this has come up with the trans issue. And I've always been supportive of the transgender community. But when the rights of transgender people, particularly transgender women, start to cause some tension with the rights and freedoms of women or the perceived safety of women, well, let's have a conversation and avoid assuming the worst of the people who want to have that conversation, right? Because
Also,
I think that in a
like, sorry to pause again, but I feel like, and I've said this a million times, but I feel like IRL, almost everyone on the left does conduct themselves this way. Like if you're talking to a family member who feels differently, or you're talking to a friend who feels differently, or even someone within the athletic community that feels differently about this issue as it relates to trans folks, I feel like most lefties agree that the best approach is to keep it pretty chill, stay calm, don't freak out, don't start virtue signaling. Like there is room for a conversation among good faith people that want to have that discussion or that conversation. If there's a little bit of pushback, whatever, you can explain it rationally, you can explain it logically. There's no reason to freak out, right? But I think the difference is the reason why people have criticized Anna Kasparian is the same reason Anna Kasparian criticized Dave Rubin from back in the day, because this is one piece of a larger trend. It's one piece of evidence that clearly shows you're engaging in a right-wing grift, a pivot. It's about the sum of the parts. I've heard people on the left bring up skepticism of the trans issue or trans sports thing. Like I remember Katie Halper once said, I'm not sure if the trans sports thing, if I am 100% aligned with it, I might have some questions. No one crucified her. No one cared. No one canceled her. The difference with Anna is that, again, this is one of many pieces that suggests she's going on a right-wing pivot, that she's leaving the left. She's made that very clear. So it's in that context which she's criticized. But I think that almost everyone on the left, ourselves included, would agree that, of course, there's room for a healthy and mature debate about just about any subject matter. I welcome that.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about any kind of debate. The reality is Anna gets herself in trouble when she calls herself a progressive and then runs out and says a bunch of things that would have been considered beyond the pale in a lot of right-wing circles in 2016. And to further illustrate that point, I want to talk about Donald Trump when he was running for president in 2016. Before all of the bathroom stuff, before all of the, trans hysteria, before all of the groomer rhetoric had taken hold, Donald Trump was to the left of Anna Kasparian on this issue. I want to say that again for everybody in the back. In 2016, when he was running for the president of the United States, even Donald J. Trump, the right-wing MAGA culture warrior, was to the left of Anna Kasparian on the issue of women's rights and trans women's rights and their ability to use public bathrooms and their ability to change and live their lives as they please. I just want to play this for everyone so that when you hear us go off on Anna and you hear us talk about how, oh my gosh, she's left the left, she has completely pivoted, she has become a hysterical turf bigot when it comes to trans women, making it out to be a problem where it's not and trying to blame Kamala's loss on them. Let's hear what Donald Trump had to say about a similar issue in 2016.
Do you have any transgender people working in your organization?
I don't know.
No?
I really don't know. I probably do. I really don't know.
So if Caitlyn Jenner were to walk into Trump Tower and want to use the bathroom, you would be fine with her using any bathroom she chooses?
That is correct.
Boom. Don't know, don't care. You can use whatever shitter you want to in Trump Tower. Wow, that is to the left of Anna Kasparian. That is pretty freaking ridiculous.
Yup. Again, and it's like, even if you feel differently about this issue or whatever, it's absolutely ridiculous to blame trans people or the trans activist community for the loss of Democrats or for why people are leaving the left. Like go back to 2004. Remember George Bush, he won re-election. Guess what was a pretty hot topic at the time? Gay marriage, gay people, the gay agenda, right? This was a big, imagine blaming John Kerry's loss and the failure of the Democratic Party to defeat George Bush. Imagine blaming like the gay rights movement for that. That's ridiculous. Of course, everyone would say that's absurd. The Democrats ran a bullshit milquetoast campaign where they agreed with the Republicans in every other sentence and tried to suck up and be just as pro-war as George Bush. And they failed. They were rejected. George Bush won overwhelmingly. And yes, gay marriage was a big deal at the time. This was a hot controversy. But I think in retrospect, it would be ridiculous to say the Democrats went too far to the left. They went, they tried too hard to embrace gay issues, when at the time you would see that they didn't. They spat in the face of gay people, much like this time around in 2024. The Democrats, they were not running a super bold pro-trans campaign, almost no Democrat in the country was like running on these issues. I think there was one Democrat in Maryland who was a trans woman who won, but even she wasn't running a super rainbow flag kind of campaign. It's not like she was
astroturfed by APEC.
Exactly. She's actually just a total corporate Democrat. You're right. And she doesn't even really lean into her identity politics that much from what I can tell. Again, the Republicans lean into identity politics way more.
The George Bush thing is hilarious too, because it would be like if in 2008 Obama was like, we need to keep gay marriage between a man and a woman. You know what I mean?
Like America, where you have so many different people with so many different backgrounds, beliefs, people of faith. The only way this works is if we respect each other and actually engage in these conversations in good faith. And I felt that the left was able to do that back in the day. And I don't know what happened, but we've moved further and further away from being able to have those conversations in
You're the
good
one
faith
that's unable
without
to have those
assuming.
conversations. You are literally the one that's unable to have those conversations with anyone but right-wing losers and dumbasses like the person you're sitting across from, Glenn fucking Beck. Are you kidding me? What's the single left-wing commentator that Anna Kasparian has engaged with in a debate about this? I don't think she has. Since leaving the left, she's completely avoided the left. She's smeared the left over and over again, pretending like we're the ones incapable of conversation and debate. Meanwhile, tons of your former colleagues, plenty of people that used to respect you, your old friends, people like Mike Figueredo and Lance from the Serfs, the list goes on and on and on. All these people have tried to open the door to discussion and polite debate and say, hey, let's hash this out. We're not trying to cancel you. We're trying to be respectful. We consider you an ally. Let's just discuss. I want to try to explain to you where you're wrong and where I'm right, yada, yada, yada. Nope. Let's go on Glenn Beck's show instead.
Malice toward individuals who have a slight difference of opinion.
So, I mean, well, let me just ask you first. You believe in the Bill of Rights?
Of course, yes.
All of them?
I love this country.
Yeah, I know.
I love this country. I love the idea of this country.
Right. I'm not questioning. I just want
Yeah.
to know, do you believe in the Bill of Rights as
Yes.
written?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That used to be our unum. We could
Right.
all come together and disagree and live different lifestyles as long as I'm not taking away your rights. You're not taking away my rights. I have a right to disagree with you. We can have conversations about anything and walk away and go, see you tomorrow, Bill. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's what's happened to us. There's been this erosion of education of how important the Bill of Rights is. We're looking now at a population, especially a younger population, that thinks that there's limits on speech.
Right.
There's not limit.
There are some limits, right?
What
But
are they?
The typical example is you can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater.
Not true. That was actually written by the Supreme Court to prove against that.
Really?
Yeah, it was not.
But you can't incite violence.
Yes,
you
that's
can't
true.
engage in defamation.
You can't say things that directly incite violence or panic.
Right.
And again, it's an objective fact that the Republican Party, specifically in its current iteration led by Donald Trump, is more anti-free speech than the Democrats or any liberal institution. Obviously, we could go on for hours about the ways in which Elon Musk has made the platform of Twitter infinitely more censorious, infinitely less free speech oriented. But also, I mean, Donald Trump has gone so far to call for the banning of flag burning, a fundamental First Amendment right that's literally been decided
Great
in the
example.
court. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, how could you possibly sit here and
Also, he
ignore
loves
that?
to sue people for libel, slander, all kinds of. How many times has he tried and lost to sue somebody for defamation? It's crazy. He uses his, bank account as a way to undermine people's free speech all the time.
And it's very clear when, we're going to go kill them and we're going to kill them now. That's the end of freedom of speech.
Right.
But without freedom of speech, where we can't say, I'm sorry, I respect this person, I love this person, they can live their life, but if I'm taking them to the hospital, I am telling the doctor that's a man, not a woman. Mm-hmm. Now, they can call themselves whatever. I could even be totally cool with it, but we have to be able to have a civil, non-hateful conversation about truth.
I mean, I agree with you on that. And, you know, the argument, and I think this is a decent argument that you'll hear.
Anna agrees with Glenn Beck. Yeah, that's this whole fucking interview. Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Like, our haters, our critics, people that watch the Vanguard, but don't necessarily agree with our commentary on this subject matter, they've told us, guys, you're missing the point. Jake and Anna are doing what they're doing so that they can infest right-wing spaces and actually spread left-wing ideology. They're doing 4D chess. They're on another level than you. You're content with your echo chamber. They want to bring these ideas to the people. They're trying to bring your ideas to the mainstream, and you're too in your little bubble and on your high hill to accept that and see the value in it. If that's what they were actually doing, it would be one thing. That might be worthy of an effort. You know, that might be like a strategy worthy of considering. But as you guys can see here, we're like 10 minutes into this thing. And at what point has Anna spread any left-wing ideology? At what point has she come in there to actually, you know, deconstruct these bullshit ideas that Glenn Beck is spreading? Not a single time. She's agreed with him once and time and time again, over and over again. That's all this is. There is no debate. There is no discussion. There is no contrast of ideas. There's no, explaining where he's wrong and promoting a different alternative left-wing agenda. No, it's all just, yep, I kind of agree with you, Glenn Beck. I'm basically right at home now on the Blaze TV.
Yeah, it's nuts, man. And of course you could talk about how this is the culmination of months and months and months, but this is the most transparent it's ever been. Even the Jillian Michaels thing, where it was like why I left the left. At least she was talking to a woman that ostensibly within the last 15 years voted for a Democrat or something. And you could be like, well, you know what? Maybe they're just having a conversation about the disenfranchised, whatever, right? People could spin a lie for themselves. Now, at this point, Glenn Beck, you don't have any disagreements and you haven't taken the time to point out and point the finger at Glenn and say, hey, man, how have you contributed to the mass division of America? Hey, Glenn, what are your thoughts on Israel-Palestine? Because that's the other elephant in the room here, guys. Anna Kasparian will come out in front of the fucking Young Turks audience and she'll say, guys, I just couldn't vote for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump because I'm so moved by, I'm so, incensed by what's happening. I can't look at Donald Trump. I can't look at Kamala Harris. I can't look at Joe Biden. Okay, but I can look at Glenn Beck because he's about to make me a little richer. Oh, but I can sit across from Ben Shapiro and smile and nod. I can sit across from whomever the fuck and break bread with you, even though you have dog shit criminal ethno-state views on this. I mean, it's nuts. Glenn Beck is the perfect example of an anti-Semite who loves Israel. He's the perfect example of a guy who thinks that we need to have the embassy in Jerusalem, because of the prophecies of whatever the fuck horseshit people believe. Okay, he is like a Mike Pompeo Republican, and that is why he finally got on board with Donald Trump, because he realized he was going to do Israel and the deep state's bidding, right? If I were Anna Kasparian and I were sitting across from one of these assholes, that would be the first and last thing that we talk about, because it unravels their entire political philosophy. Hey, dude, you want to invest in this country? How come you're so pro murdering children overseas? Oh, you want to talk about respectability? You want to talk about civility?
Exactly.
Let's talk about not letting children starve. You know what I'm saying? It's fucking crazy that she would launder this asshole's reputation and then have the fucking balls to come out here and be like, oh, I just care about the children of Gaza too much. Go fuck yourself.
But Zach, you're forgetting that Glenn Beck regrets supporting the Iraq War. He says it in this interview. You didn't even let him get to it. He regrets supporting it. So can you really hold that against him? Come on, everyone has the right to evolve.
From those who are more restrictive or wanting more restrictions on speech is, well, we want better terms of service when it comes to, private companies, but free speech only has to do with the government. And if the government isn't violating your free speech, then why are we complaining about,
That's not a problem if the government's not in bed with all of the business. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Interesting. What do you mean by that?
Republicans used to be the big business people.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And
I think they still are to a large extent.
I think remember we talked about those, the three with Republicans. There's that machinery Republican. They're all in bed still. They're all in bed. Yeah. That section, I hope, comes to an end. But there'll always be those.
Oh, you mean all of the people that Donald Trump put in his cabinet who you support unwaveringly and uncritically?
Yeah, more billionaires than ever before in the cabinet.
Huckabee, fucking Pete Hegseth from Fox News, like all of these crazy goons
Marco
of the
Rubio.
established. Marco Rubio, thank you. I forgot about him.
So I agree with you on that. But it was when you're in bed, especially now. I don't know how you define fascism, but fascism, the technical definition of fascism, is a public-private partnership with the government and private industry. Communism doesn't let you have
Oh, so Elon Musk and Donald Trump got it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
literally.
private ownership. Fascism says, no, you can have private industry, but you're going to do it our way. And we'll let you have the company. And if you don't want to do it our way, we'll destroy you.
That is literally how Elon Musk got all of his money. That's how not all of his money, most of his money. The money that took Elon Musk from being your friendly neighborhood billionaire to the richest man in the world, all government money. You know who they're buying? You know who's out there buying Elon's rockets, Gavin? Do you know who's giving him permission to shoot shit into outer space? It's the government. They're also giving him a bunch of money to do it. Okay, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yep.
Take it away from you or whatever. We've been headed that way for 100+ years. Both sides have been doing it. Right now, the public-private partnership where the government says, we can't do this, but you can. That's fascism. That's wildly dangerous. And both sides have a propensity to do that because they both like power and both like control and money. But because of social media and Google and everything else, we are in a situation to where who's controlling whom? Which one is more afraid of the other, the government or Google? Who's afraid of who? You know what I mean? Who has more power?
Well, I would say right now it feels as though the corporations have more power.
I agree with you.
Especially considering the fact that, corporate interests fund politicians on both sides of the political aisle. And so they're completely captured by corporate interests.
Correct.
And I think that has happened to the detriment of the American people, regardless of whether they vote Democrat or Republican. And so what I see as a bigger problem when it comes to this speech question and how it's impacting private companies is that private companies are increasingly catering to niche audiences or one side of the political spectrum over the other. And unfortunately, and I understand this because I think I was also kind of in that bubble of seeking content or information that only validated what I already believed because it's comfortable. And I totally understand why people do that.
That's honestly really not true, though. As you've pointed out, during the heyday of TYT, when TYT was the most watched, when they were actually growing, they engaged in all kinds of debate and rigorous discourse, and people loved it. They celebrated it. And it wasn't just debates with guys like Dennis Prager, right, who we already have watched Anna Kasparian have to be confronted with the change of tone now with how she talks to the right wing. I remember we played the clip not that long ago of her being like, well, you know what? I don't even care about Trump supporters. Fuck you. I am better than you. How about that? Like, this was Anna Kasparian. Who she's talking about, this amorphous person, that's her. That's how she built her entire career. And now what's happened is she's realized, oh my gosh, the money's run out. This is not where I can continue to grow. So now she's backtracking. She's getting on the bike and she's backpedaling, and she has to go on a humiliation tour, just like Cenk, and grovel to Glenn Beck and be like, please, listeners of Glenn Beck who want to hear a young woman talk about how she was brainwashed by the poisonous blue-haired left for 19 years, like she's some woman that's come out of Scientology or some shit and needs to be rescued by these, hey, it's okay, you were just a little girl. And then meanwhile, you want to talk about how, you're somehow a feminist too. Like, no, you don't. You want to be pat on the head by these old fucking men, have them give you a couple bucks so you could be their token and move on. It's pretty sad, pretty low, pretty despicable.
I used to do that myself. I didn't do it consciously. It was like a thing that I think I was just doing because it's like, I trust this source because this source is reporting accurately. But it turns out, no, I actually trust that source because that source is telling me what I want to hear.
Correct.
And so this is a huge problem because the divisions in the country and the inability
Excuse me.
because the divisions in the country and the inability to have conversations with people you disagree with, I think is a product of the bubbles that we live in, right? The media bubbles we live in.
Well, whatever media bubble you've wandered into seems to be even worse than the one you left, Anna, because verifiably within the last several months, you guys spread a straight up fake false story about Venezuelan migrants taking over apartment buildings in Aurora, Colorado. This was thoroughly debunked by a YouTuber named Jose. I highly recommend you guys watch his entire hour-long video explaining in excruciating details the way in which Cenk and Anna, in a totally lazy way, spread right-wing propaganda, anti-immigrant, xenophobic propaganda, and just never apologized, never retracted the story or anything. So again, I can understand wanting to get out of a left-wing echo chamber if all you get your news, the only sources of news you get are straight up ideologically left-wing. I don't only get my news from left-wing sources.
Fuck no.
Yeah, I think most of us on the left are actually pretty well-rounded. Obviously, there's folks out there that probably only subscribe to 2 or 3 channels or, get their source from 2 or 3 papers, whatever. But for the most part, people on the left, yeah, we're knowledgeable. We pay attention to the news. And guess what? There's not a lot of super left-wing news in the country. You have to seek it out. You turn on your freaking TV, you look at your phone, you look at the, news feed on Facebook or whatever. You're not going to see a bunch of left-wing shit. You're going to see a bunch of corporate stuff. Like I said, you have to go out of your way to find the left-wing perspective. But again, wherever you're getting your news from now, and it seems to be even worse because it's leading you down fake news rabbit holes and leading you to totally destroy whatever sort of journalistic credibility you're trying to embrace now in your new centrist era.
How to fix that? I mean, one way that I've tried is by providing counter narratives and a different point of view or playing devil's advocate on TYT. Or more importantly, if I've changed my mind, I want to be as honest with my audience as possible.
You have to.
And living in Los Angeles, living in California, which is completely controlled by the Democratic Party, it has allowed me to see some of the flaws in the.
She has totally forgotten or forced herself to stop sharing her critique of Democratic corporate politics, right? That's what's crazy, guys. Go back and look. You can find Anna Kasparian making cogent critiques of mainstream Democratic policy, but what did she do? She talked about and highlighted the alternatives that would still be people-powered and worker-led. She used to be able to wax on that, and now she's like, oh, actually, we just need Rick Caruso. We actually just need some Republicans to come in and really clean up these streets because Gavin Newsom's just not up to the job.
Policies that the Democratic Party is pushing for on a more national scale. And I don't want that to happen if I've experienced some of these policies and they have not worked out so well. But what's interesting is the resistance to any of that critique that you'll see from, not everyone in the audience, not even the majority of the audience, but there's always that very loud minority of people who demand that you only tell them what they want to hear.
I know.
Validate what they already believe.
Or you're a traitor.
Or you're a traitor, exactly. Yeah. Or a grifter.
I think, one of the things, I love that one.
Yeah.
I was against Trump in 2016, very vocal about it.
I remember.
And I was a traitor and a grifter. I was just trying to make money. And then he did some things that I said he'll never do. And I agreed with the policies. And I had said, if I'm wrong, I'll admit it. I did. And I was a grifter and a traitor again. I mean,
You
it's
are
just,
a
there's
fucking
no.
grifting piece of shit. You are a grifting piece of shit. You and all these other assholes that in 2016 or 2015 pretended like we have to take a stand. The honorable Republican Party of Ted Cruz and Jeb Bush. We have to take a stand against Donald Trump. Then Donald Trump wins, and you realize, well, if I want to stay even remotely relevant in this landscape, in this media environment, I got to suck up. I got to become a Trump propagandist. And that's exactly what Glenn Beck did. If he had any actual principles, if he believed a word that he was saying back in 2015 about the threat that Donald Trump represented to the Republican Party or whatever, then yeah, he would have continued to talk about that stuff instead of immediately switching on a dime and pandering to all these dumb fuck mega people. And that's exactly what Anna Kasparian is doing. So yes, you're both grifters. In fact, you're two of the most transparent grifters. If you guys aren't grifters, then who the fuck is? Like, seriously, who the fuck does the term apply to?
In
no
this,
winning.
there's no way to win. More with Anna here in just a second. First,
But, I think
You didn't want to watch that.
there's been a sea change. We're at the very beginning of it, but it's strange. I was just talking to Donald Trump. I was doing a fundraiser at Mar-a-Lago a couple of days ago, and I said, I think like we're like the cool kids now. I've never been at the cool kids table.
This is wild. I look, I'm going to pause on saying the cool kids.
No,
but I will
know.
say this.
But we've never been even near the cool kids. We're at the, we're in the hallway of the cool kids table. You know what I mean? I know that, but we've never, and he said, YMCA. How is YMCA suddenly cool?
It's not just about that. Trump is, and the audience hates when I say this, but it's just demonstrably true. He's funny. He's an entertainer.
Nobody hates when you say that. We say that all the time.
Yeah, 100%. Everyone admits that. Almost everyone admits that. Even people on the left can admit that Donald Trump is funny. But again, where is the pushback? You're not going to give any pushback to that now it's cool to be MAGA. It's cool to be a Trump supporter. No, it's not. No, it's not. If anything, being in power and cuddling up to the dude who's in power, that's not fucking cool. How's that anti-establishment? How's that populist? Just being a bootlicker and a fucking establishment cheerleader? That's what you guys are doing. That's not cool. Again, I'll admit that you guys won. I'll admit that MAGA is the dominant ideology. I'll admit that the right-wingers are in control. But I will never fucking admit that being a right-winger makes you cool. I'll never admit that being MAGA is somehow punk rock or whatever. No, it's not. Specifically when losers like Glenn Beck and Karen Kasparian are leading the charge.
100%.
I mean, he was an entertainer before, he was a politician, that's for sure.
That's what also causes trouble for him.
It does. It certainly does. Yeah. But, I think the reason why you're feeling how you're feeling about the perception of the Republican Party now versus, in the Bush era.
Hang on just a second. I don't want to say Republican Party because that's not cool. That'll never be cool. What? There's this new coalition of Trump, Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, Elon Musk, people that are coming from all different points of view. It's the way America.
And get ready, because this is where Anna just can't take it anymore. You're going to hear some fiery pushback. She's really going to come over with a pile driver here for the left.
Elon Musk, people that are coming from all different points of view. It's the way America that I grew up in. It's the way America was. We disagree on a lot, but
That's like saying the Democratic Party became cool when Joe Scarborough left the GOP and joined our ranks. Like all these exciting new voices, people like Joe Scarborough, Liz Cheney. Yeah, like that's about as cool as Tulsi Gabbard and RFK. Spare me the fake populist bullshit. These people are utter ghouls. They're Zionist, genocidal freaks. They're in bed with every terrible force that seeks to undermine humanity. Fuck these people.
I'm sensing a lot of animosity from the gentleman over here, and I wanted to bring in a quick phone call because I think that Anna Kasparian is making a lot of insightful points here that I want to congratulate. She's a real Kennedy person. She understands that in this country, it's about following the dough. It's about following the dough. And I always follow the dough. I follow the money. I follow the food sources in this country. I follow Monsanto. It all starts with the grain and wheat and poison. And I just want to assure everyone in this audience that I'm going to tackle the greatest and the most pressing issues amongst us head on. I am going to remove the red 40 from all your favorite breakfast cereals to make sure that your children grow up big and strong again. We're going to make sure that all of the milk is raw and there is no red 40 in your cereal. And that's America's promise. And that's God's promise from a Kennedy to you.
Wow. Thanks, RFK. Really appreciate you clarifying what he meant by the unity ticket over there.
We have one central vision, and that is, in this case, end this corruption, end this nonsense.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, no, that's a great way of putting it. And, the CEO and my co-host, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, he is really trying to bring like a populist coalition of people together, and individuals, basically Americans who see the rot in our political system thanks to the corruption. And so it's been his top issue ever since I've met him. And so he's been trying to get money out of politics. So these politicians actually represent what the people want.
But of course, when he ran for office, he said that he would take super PAC money and that it would be only a handicap on himself if he didn't, which is funny. That's the same thing Elizabeth Warren said right before she sold out all of her progressive principles. Funny how Bernie Sanders was able to have the most effective insurgent primary campaign I've ever seen in my entire life from any party outside of, unfortunately, Donald Trump. I do think it's fair to call Donald Trump an insurgent, but he did it without a single fucking cent of corporate dollars.
Yep. And again, guys, Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian going on shows like Tim Pool, Glenn Beck, and Patrick Bet David is not uniting a populist coalition of Americans. This is disgusting gaslighting. I'm sorry, but that's not what's happening. You're pandering to idiots and agreeing with them 90% of the time under this bullshit auspice of like, we gotta connect as Americans and unite to take down the establishment. Meanwhile, we kiss the boot of the establishment and launder what they're about to do, launder their fascist agenda. That's what's happening, and all you're doing is agreeing with all these people. Of course they're gonna trot you out there to say, see, this person who used to criticize me and point out my bullshit, expose me every day, now she's come around. Now she's saying that I was right. And now she's proving my point for me to you guys, my dumb idiot audience. That's all this is. It's no populist coalition. The establishment is not going to get taken down by the Avengers of Tim Pool, Patrick Bet David, Jillian Michaels, and Glenn Beck with fucking Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian on the side like Black Widow and Hawkeye or something. Like, this is not a real plan. It's a grift. It's more transparent than almost any that I've seen executed. And most people, luckily, seem to understand that, but it's still wild to see the gaslighting to this day at this point in time when it's beyond clear.